Welcome to Sam Outside. I'm Sam and I'm outside, inviting you to consider the risks you take when you're spending time outside. I've made a career of working outside, which means I've also had to make a career out of risk management. All right. So whether it's my 25 years working in camping and outdoor education, or 15 years being an arborist, or the 8+ years as a certified forest therapy guide, when you work outside, yeah, there are some risks that are just inherent. So automatically we go toward the physical. All right. So when it comes to managing risks outside, obviously weather, it's a huge factor. All right. So not only for the people outside, but also, for equipment. So some things just don't operate when they're too cold. All right. In fact, working in the climbing industry and working as an arborist, um, aluminum connectors, or carabiners as they're known, they fail at -30. Right? It's just they can't do the stress, which is why at some times a year I got to switch to steel carabiners. Right? Just a small thing. Now, on that note, forced therapy as a practice, when we're inviting people to be super immersed and get acclimated, when it's too cold, right? It's just not possible. It's not comfort. I can't invite someone to connect with nature when they're not able to be comfortable in their own skin because of the weather, right? Even our local schools, they've got uh, some concerns around how much time we expose children to cold, right? So there's, you know, in even with the Ministry of Labor here in Ontario, right, whether it's cold or heat, right? If it's too hot outside, even with humidity, we're only allowed to expose workers to so much time before we offer them, um, a cooling station, making sure we're monitoring their hydration, and we inform them about the signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion, heat exposure, right? And then exposure to the sun as well. Same thing with, when it's cold out, students aren't allowed to be outside for more than, 15 minutes when it's, -15, -20, and they just don't go outside if it's any colder than -20, which might include the wind chill. And today is an example where we have an air quality warning because of some fires quite north of us, and the way the winds are blowing, that there is an air quality warning, which means if you've got a compromised system, right, you're already at risk. And so again, the media is informing people to watch out for those signs and symptoms, right? So the risks are, right, some wheezing, some coughing, irritation of the throat, the eyes, the nose, right? But if you already have some conditions, right, so those are factors. So when it's actually going outside, no matter what the industry, there's always the risk of inclement weather, right? So I do live and I periodically check my weather, not only for the changing conditions today, warnings, but, planning out my week. And it's so hard because the weather changes so fast to try and plan my life 1 week or 2 weeks in advance. After that, I have to have considerations of what, about what other living things are in the environment. So, what else could be, well, there's wildlife. All right. And when considering the demographic of the people that I'm working with, there are just some situations where they're not comfortable because of where they come from. Being outside is risky. People are coming from all over the world where there are actual predators and things that are actively hunting and or killing humans, or they're just exposed to other things that are at risk. Now, I'm lucky where I live. The most dangerous animal is a moose, right? And there's some seasons where that's more of a factor. All right, and there are, again, it comes with knowledge and experience. I know how to manage wildlife encounters, but then there's insects. As a guide for forest therapy, it just doesn't make sense for me, like cold weather, to invite people out in early spring when I've got black flies, mosquitoes, and deer flies, and now it's horse flies. People are not just comfortable. Even if you are from around where I'm from and grew up how I did, you're just not comfortable. And heaven forbid you don't have insects as part of your regular life, then yeah, it's it's too much. So I just don't do it. There's no point in it. So insects are another thing, and then there's plant life. All right, when we talk about hazardous plants, you mean automatically go to the big three. All right, the word poison is rated. So poison ivy, all right, poison oak, poison sumac, right? So you've got to learn to identify them, and you've got to teach people about what the symptoms are and then how to protect themselves against that. But there's other things that just aren't comfortable either, right? So we might get involved with walking through brambles, which might include raspberry, wild rose, um, blackberry, things like that. They've got thorns, and if you're not protecting yourself, then yeah, then that's a risk. So, and then there's giant hogweed. Oh, it's an invasive species, and if you come into contact with those oils, you are exposed to continued risk possibly for the rest of your life, where ultraviolet exposure reactivates, that area. So, and it becomes systemic, right? So there are considerations I have to make when inviting others, including myself, to spend time in nature, right? And these are all the physical things. So in my line of work, you can see I've spent my morning setting up our outdoor rock climbing wall, right? I've had to pre-use inspect the equipment, and I've got to make sure that I've got some training and I've got some experience, and then I also have to protect myself. There is some documentation, and I've got to have proof of training, and then I've got to document what equipment, how much equipment, the condition of the equipment. That's all part of it. So as a guide, when I'm taking guests out for forest therapy, I do pre-inspect the trail, and I usually have to look for things that I'm either going to avoid, or ways to reduce or mitigate the risks, or just eliminate the risk, right? So if there's a branch or something on the trail, I'll try and move it. But if there's a bridge I need and it's not functional, if I'm talking about equipment failure, either don't use that part of the trail or I go around it. Just choose a different trail, right? And as a guide, and as a facility where we invite people to participate in wilderness therapy and adventure therapy, like like rock climbing here behind me, there are just some inherent risks. So when I invite someone to review and sign, right, an acknowledgement of risk, a waiver, and then invite some documentation around medical information, there are a lot of questions, right? And I need someone to sign that. So that implies an understanding, which now we're getting into, some of the cognitive risks, right? I've got an age limit for this rock wall behind me because some young people, right, if you've got any other, challenge, then you might not understand the risks I'm inviting you to take. So there's informed consent, right? So I've got to be trained to do that. I've got to be able to speak intelligently about that. I've got to get written and verbal confirmation that they understand the risks. And yeah, death is on that list, right? So I've had to work with people who just didn't understand the risks, and they chose not to sign. So that's, to me, is just a choice not to participate. So that's keeping myself safe. All right. So those are some of the risks. I don't want to be liable for anything. So part of that is just coming prepared. So I have to watch the weather. I have to pre-use inspect my equipment, my trail, and I've got to know the environment, whether it's insects, plant life, wildlife. And there's some things I can't control, like the weather. There's something I can't control, the chemistry of the group. And unfortunately, people do bring their own baggage. All right. They have natural anxieties and reservations and a lack of information and understanding about nature. And it's real. So I have to work with that. And you should consider those risks as well. All right. And one other side effect might be the emotional state. As a certified forest therapy guide, I am not a therapist. All right. And I've seen it, and I've been witness to it, and I've, been exposed to it myself. Time in nature, that moment of relaxation, and, in the industry, we call it an aha moment, right? It's an awakening. There are some deep emotions that are associated with PTSD, with grief, with trauma. And when someone's in an emotional state and they're really connecting into themselves, and tune with their breathing, and tune with their own emotions, and just, sometimes caught in those moments of awe, man, other stuff comes up, right? And it can be a well. And again, so my advice is, forest therapy can't be your only form of therapy, mental and emotional, right? It's a good start. It's a practice in addition to other professional means of therapy, right? Whether that's a psychologist or a therapist, right? So nature heals, right? And there's so many forms of it. In ecotherapy, which is a big umbrella term, we've got wilderness therapy, which has its own inherent risks due to time and exposure. We've got adventure therapy, like rock wall. Well, yeah, there's some safety equipment involved, right? We've got horticultural therapy, where again, you might be exposed to plants that people might be allergic to, and then there's just some reactions to soils or things, bacteria, molds in the soil. We've got animal therapy, yeah, where there's a chance, because we're working with animals, that, there's some behaviors that we can't control, right? So we've got to have some training and exposure to that. Right? Forest therapy, nature therapy, we're just working in nature, right? Even exposure to the sun, to the heat, to the air quality. These are all considerations. There are risks to going outside. So be informed, have the right gear, and know your own limitations, right? And if you're going outside and you have prescriptions, you got to bring them, right? So bring your nitro pills, bring your inhaler, for me, right? I carry an EpiPen, right? I'm allergic to stinging insects. I've had so many bee stings in my life, my body can't take it anymore. The next one might kill me. So that's why I carry an EpiPen, right? And I've got to know what risks and what medical needs my guests and clients have as well. So there's so much planning and preparation to a positive, healthy experience outside. So know the risks, either avoid them, eliminate them, mitigate them. You can accept them, right? So just be safe. It's meant to be a positive experience, right? Thanks for watching. Go outside. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.